Mark Carney wants a full government takeover of our economy. He wants more control over your life, so elites and insiders like him control and profit from everything. We Conservatives, by contrast, we believe in freedom. We want you to have the ability to control your own destiny and make your own course. We believe in freedom of enterprise, freedom of speech, thought, religion, expression, and more. We want government that minds its own business and leaves people to be free to decide for themselves.
That's Pierre Poilievre at his best. When I get back, some comments about where this came from and where it might be going. This is David Krayden broadcasting live from Ottawa. We'll be back in mere moments.
The Prime Minister lied and his minions continue to lie.
We need political change. But we also need to resolve to resist.
Thanks for watching today, folks. It's a real pleasure to be back on this overcast day in the Ottawa area. Kind of, I think, is symbolic of the way the country is right now. But we'll be showing you some more of that Pierre Poilievre speech from the Calgary Stampede. A lot of you have been asking me to play some of it and the comment on it. What you just heard, that's about near the end of the speech. And if you recall, what did I say last week? That Pierre Poilievre needs to talk about freedom, and he needs to talk like he did during that Rex Murphy interview, that famous Rex Murphy interview, Christmas interview, where he said, I want to lead a government that minds its own business. And he said it again. And I said, Pierre Poilievre, you've got to say that at every opportunity. Why didn't he say that during the election campaign? Why did he get sidetracked? Because bad communications advice from people who don't want a government that minds its own business, that want a government just like the Liberals. That's the kind of people he was unfortunately listening too much to during the election campaign. But I think he's back on his stride now. He's talking about freedom, and that's what he needs to do. He needs to talk about a limited government that gets out of our lives. That's how he differentiates himself from Mark Carney, who is a big government guy. Mark Carney believes in massive government spending. As we said yesterday, $300 billion deficit, according to the C.D. Howe Institute and the Fraser Institute, both confirming. That's where they are. That's why they don't want a budget. And that's why, of course, we've got this going on. Finance Minister directs cabinet colleagues to find billions in spending cuts. Why? Because they're way over the fiscal cliff. 50 billion used to be the fiscal cliff under Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland. You remember that? Chrystia Freeland found it just too much to go beyond 50 billion. They're at 300 billion now and counting. This is why Champagne is looking for cuts, because it's getting embarrassing. What else is embarrassing? Well, CBC. I love this. This is what you would call certainly somebody who would be representative of diversity within the CBC, and he's had enough. He said he can't continue broadcasting at CBC and maintain his integrity because he says they're a bunch of hypocrites, fat cats hypocrites, and that's exactly what we've been calling them for quite some time. Now, I'm going to go to the Carolyn Levitt news conference from yesterday shortly, but I wanted to show you this first because this confirms another aspect of what we've been saying on this broadcast for the past month or so. Mark Carney wants to merge together all elements of what used to be, or what should be, nonpartisan government. The government that just runs the country, the bureaucracy. Yes, I know it's biased. I know it's the deep state, but these are the people that keep the country running, and they're not supposed to be in the pocket of Mark Carney or the Liberal Party. But look at this. Look at this. Solidone from the Privy Council, PCO, is producing propaganda for the Liberal election campaign. Was producing. The Privy Council office used psychographic polling ahead of 2021 election to determine if Canadians were very angry with people who didn't follow pandemic rules. First policy announcement of 2021 campaign: vaccine mandates. And according to Blacklock's reporter, documents, Privy Council office polled main themes of Lib's Elbows Up campaign months before Trump imposed tariffs, found Canadians petrified of mass layoffs. So they did it in 2021, they did it in 2025. And long before Donald Trump said anything that might have precipitated the Elbows Up campaign. And this is very interesting. Now we're going to go to a clip of this minister here. He's quite something. This is, of course, Tim Hodgson, the Natural Resources Minister under the current Carney government. In my previous life, I did a lot of deals. I never did a deal with the press. Those conversations are going on. They're going to happen in private. The cabinet won't publicly discuss fast-tracked mega projects deemed in national interest until finalized. Tim Hodgson tells reporters they are going to happen in private. Wow. Now, what have I been saying about Mark Carney's desire to merge the deep state with the Liberal Party, to co-opt the opposition, to create what is essentially a one-party state? Now, when I first started talking about this, I could just see some of the beginnings of this happening. I could see the intentionality. But every week we are seeing more evidence that this is actually Mark Carney's goal. And I think it is worth noting. Now, here's Tim Hodgson. This guy is something else in terms of his attitude. He's a good friend of Mark Carney. He's a corporate crony. The two go back a long way, and the two have very similar styles, meaning Tim Hodgson is extremely arrogant in a way that even perhaps exceeds that arrogance of Mark Carney. But let's have a look at this.
Press. I had a question about pathways. Just wondering where discussions are at with the partners there about anything the federal government can do to give them more confidence in making an FID on that project.
So I can tell you that there's been lots of discussions with various folks around pathways. It's something that's being worked on actively. I don't think, in my previous life, I did a lot of deals. I never did a deal with the press. Those conversations are going on. They're going to happen in private. When there's a transaction, we'll let everybody know. But you should assume that everyone is focused on trying to figure out how to make that happen.
And just to follow up, there was a report in the Devoir today about a proposed new LNG project for Quebec. Just wondering what you know about that, and also whether a project like that could fall under a national interest project under C5.
So my understanding is they've had some conversations with Quebec. It's appropriate that they have the conversations with Quebec first. Quebec wants to advance that project with the proponent. I'm sure they'll bring it forward, and it will be evaluated against the criteria, just like all the other projects we were discussing a moment ago.
All right, thank you. Oh, go ahead.
Hi, Minister. Reed Southwood with...
Wow. Have you ever? No, I don't make deals with the press. Those conversations are happening in private, and you're not going to find out about them. Let me remind you, Mr. Hodgson, Minister Hodgson, that you're dealing with public money. In your previous life, apparently you were in the private sector and you were dealing with your own money or other people's money who were part of the firm or investors or stockholders. Well, guess what? Now you're dealing with taxpayer money. And you're supposed to be telling us what you're doing with that taxpayer money. And sometimes that means talking to the media and actually revealing what you're up to. Here's some more from good old Tim.
financial Exposed. I'm just curious about what steps that you've taken so far sort of illustrate this changed relationship that you hope to have with the oil industry and how that's going.
It's my third time in Alberta, 6 weeks. I think we've had dialogue with industry almost every day. I think we've had dialogue with First Nations almost every day. I think we have regular daily dialogue with the different provinces about building a Canada strong. I think we passed an act, the Building One Canadian Economy Act, to reset the tone in this country. I think those are all pretty tangible steps.
Okay, and just on this this idea that there could be a proponent to emerge for a pipeline to the northern BC coast, what kinds of timelines are you hoping for to realize? Like, if someone came to you today, like, what kinds of timelines are you looking at in terms of how quickly this will happen?
So, how quickly a proponent comes is up to the proponent. We don't. They need to step forward with a proposal. That proposal will be evaluated against the 5 criteria, and if it is designated, which is under the Act, it is designated, there will be a conditions document with all of the conditions laid out for operation. That document will be clear and transparent. And the commitment of the federal government is it will do all of its work, all of its processes within a 2-year time period. So once a project is designated, the goal is to get stuff, everything dealt with from a federal government, environmental and Indigenous consultation perspective within 2 years.
All right. Were we listening to that? 2 years. How on earth is that in any way fast tracking these projects? 2 years? It's already taking 2 years. So this is another example of how Carney cannot deliver even on his most basic promises. He's already completely violated his promises of cutting spending, of keeping the deficit lower. Now his fast track projects are going to take 2 years. I'm sorry. You don't know whether to laugh or cry or just go into a rage over this. But probably the third, probably the third option's not the best. But I want to say at this point, please share this broadcast with your friends and family, because you two ain't doing it. They never will for this show. But you guys are tremendous. I know occasionally I get some really caustic remarks in the comments section. That's your right. This is a free speech platform. That's what we're here for. I'm not here to confirm the political notions of any political party. I'm here to talk about the options facing this country right now, and I think that's part of it. Now, before we get to the Pierre Poilievre speech from the Stampede, which I think is absolutely magnificent, and I've got plenty to say about it, but I think it's perhaps a turning point for him, because there's been naysayers out there saying he's not going to get approval in the next leadership vote or the leadership assessment. Maybe it's time for him to go, and it's going to be a very difficult by-election campaign to some degree. Of course he'll win, but he'll get some uncomfortable questions. But that's just going to help him prepare for the House when he comes back, because he'll be getting questions like that from reporters about Alberta independence, and he needs to hone his responses to those questions, and he'll have an opportunity to do that all summer long in this by-election campaign, which of course I think he'll win handily. But This is a news conference yesterday from the White House press secretary, Carolyn Levitt. And I want to show this to you first because, of course, yesterday we did a show predominantly about Jeffrey Epstein and the U.S. Justice Department and Federal Bureau of Investigation saying nothing to see here, folks. There's never been a client list, even though Attorney General Pam Bondi said there was a client list on her desk. That's exactly what she said. And that episode was, well, it started off really strong. It got the thumb put on it. And it's, because what, we can't talk about Epstein now? We can't talk about Epstein. No. So here's Carolyn Levitt, and I thought she got off to a great start, and she's doing her job. Her job is to lie for the government if that's what she's told to do. And as somebody who worked in this business of communications, who was a spokesman for the Canadian Armed Forces, for various members of Parliament, I can tell you this. My adage used to be, if you lie, you die, because it will come out. So it's not only immoral to lie to people, to reporters, as a spokesperson, it's stupid, really stupid, because the truth will come out sooner or later, and you who told the lie will end up wearing it. So I always try to tell the truth. If I couldn't tell the truth, I said, I can't tell you that. I can't respond to that question because I can't tell you the truth. I was, in many instances in my military public affairs career, I was in that sort of dilemma where I couldn't answer truthfully because it was against the orders. It was contrary to orders to answer. So I just said nothing. And I would specify that. But Carolyn Levitt here, I think it really, really looks silly in this exchange with these two reporters. Peter Ducey from Fox News actually digs in really, really hard. But let's watch it because this is an exercise in complete delusion.
and FBI have now concluded there was no Jeffrey Epstein client list. What do you tell MAGA supporters who say they want anyone involved in Jeffrey Epstein's alleged crimes to be held accountable?
This administration wants anyone who has ever committed a crime to be held accountable, and I would argue this administration has done more to lock up bad guys than certainly the previous administration. And the Trump administration is committed to truth and to transparency. That's why the Attorney General and the FBI Director pledged at the President's direction to do an exhaustive review of all of the files related to Jeffrey Epstein's crimes and his death. And they put out a memo in conclusion of that review. There was material they did not release because, frankly, it was incredibly graphic and it contained child pornography, which is not something that's appropriate for public consumption. But they committed to an exhaustive investigation. That's what they did, and they provided the results of that. That's transparency.
No, that's not transparency, Carolyn, at all. We have sufficient evidence in terms of the aircraft manifest. Who was on the aircraft to Epstein Island? Why were they going there? We have cell phone numbers. We have a lot of evidence indicating who was involved in this, but there's no crime here. These criminals shouldn't be behind bars, or at least investigated. Lots of victims, you admit that, but apparently no criminals, no predators. And this is absolutely beyond belief. The Justice Department memo, which of course she confirmed was coming from the Attorney General and the FBI Director, not from some underling who just put it out. I've seen that suggested, that they weren't even aware that this went out. Somebody made the decision to put a memo out and give it to Axios. That's ridiculous. Of course, it came from the highest levels. But listen to Peter Ducey, I think. And, Carolyn, this is embarrassing for you.
Sure.
Caroline. Okay, so the FBI looks at the circumstances surrounding the death of Jeffrey Epstein. According to the report, this systematic review revealed no incriminating client list. So what happened to the Epstein client list that the Attorney General said she had on her desk.
Well, I think if you go back and look at what the Attorney General said in that interview, which was on your network on Fox News.
Got the quote.
Go ahead.
John Roberts said, DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen? And she said, it's sitting on my desk right now to review.
Yes, she was saying the entirety of all of the paperwork, all of the paper in relation to Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. That's what the Attorney General was referring to, and I'll let her speak for that. But again, when it comes to the FBI and the Department of Justice, they are more than committed to ensuring that bad people are put behind bars. They have an operation going on right now called Summer Heat, which has our murder rate trending in the lowest direction in United States history. Their emphasis on violent crime and locking up violent criminals has led to the arrest of 14,000 violent criminals. That's a 62% increase from the same time period last year. So this Attorney General and the FBI Director are committed to putting bad people behind bars where they belong. They promised an exhaustive review. That's what they did. For any further details, I would refer you to the Department of Justice.
So distraction and talking points is what we're going to get. And that's very unsettling because a lot of us expected, and at least hoped for, a little more real transparency and honesty from this administration than we ever got from the Biden administration, which fabricated lie after lie after lie. And this, of course, is the same sort of thing. And we need transparency. Carolyn Levitt talks about transparency. Well, let's see some. Let's see some from this administration on this issue. And yes, you're doing a great job getting rid of illegals. You're doing a wonderful job of locking up criminals, reducing the crime rate. You're doing a fantastic job at the law and order file. But I'm sorry you failed on this one, on the Epstein file. We need more information, and we need the people involved to be at the very least indicated, exposed. Even if you don't want to charge them, we need to know who was involved. Now, I've saved the best for last here. And this is a wonderful speech from Pierre Poilievre, and I'll comment from time to time. But I think this is the Pierre Poilievre we need to see more of. We didn't see enough of this Pierre Poilievre during the election campaign because he got distracted on Donald Trump. He got distracted on trying to sound as tough as Mark Carney with his elbows up rhetoric. He got distracted by a communications department that wanted to move him to the left, as they always do in that party. They always want to move true conservative leaders to the left and the party to the left because they really do think it works. And there'll be a surprise in the midst of this.
Thank you, Calgary. It's great to be home. It's great to be back here for the greatest outdoor show on earth. And before I begin, thank you to the amazing Damien Kurek, a man for whom I will forever be grateful. Thank you, Damien. You know,
and of course, Damien Kurek is the member of parliament who's stepping aside so Pierre Poilievre can run in Battle River Crowfoot, a rural riding that Kurek won with 80% of the vote. So I think it's a safe conservative seat. But as I said, there'll be some tough questions.
There'll be more to say about him in a moment, but I did overhear him talking about my door knocking, and what he forgot to tell was his first campaign. Despite the immense lead he had, he did not want to take anything for granted. Damien was out door knocking. I think it was in Drumheller, and he wouldn't let up. It got to be 9 o'clock, it was late at night, and he kept going. And his team said, you know, it's getting to be 9:15, maybe you should think about stopping. He said, no, we got to keep on going. He wanted to win every single vote. So it got to be 9:30. The lights were starting to go out on the street, and Damien just kept on going. And finally, his team said, Damien, you're going to start costing us rather than winning us votes. He said, okay, I'll make you a deal. One more vote, and then I stop. He goes up to this house, lights are all off, bangs on the door. All of a sudden, babies crying. Multiple babies crying. The lights go on, they're screaming and hollering from the parents. The mother opens the door and says, you just woke up my triplets. And my husband, she says, who is an Olympic weightlifter, is going to be coming down to have a word with you. And he said, that won't be necessary, just tell him that the Liberal candidate came by to say hello.
Okay, so they've hired a gag writer apparently for within the official opposition leader's office. And that's why. Where was this guy during the campaign? This is, this a great joke, great anecdote, and he needs to do much more of that. But
how are you, Premier? Great to see Premier Danielle Smith, a champion for freedom. Wow. They love you, Danielle, and I know that you're a very hospitable person at Stampede time. Even for Liberals, we have to be hospitable. And so let me start in a spirit of nonpartisanship as a Calgarian to welcome Prime Minister Mark Carney to his very first Stampede in this role. And he had, of course, to do the customary thing and flip some pancakes. Now, he thought he would be great at it, because in his trade talks with Trump, he's had so much experience flip-flopping. But
now, at that point, I want to show you this. This is what Pierre Poilievre's talking about.
There you go. That's not. I was better on. I'm better on.
All right, question for you all. Who's the best pancake flipper of the three? Is it Pierre Poilievre? Is it Mark Carney? Or is it Daniel Smith?
There you go. That's not. I was better on. I'm better on.
All right, now back to more of Pierre Poilievre, but that's what he was specifically referring to. Not a great moment for Mark Carney. Apparently, he's never made pancakes. I mean, I make pancakes. I'm sure most of you watching have made pancakes. You know, you don't immediately try to flip the pancake as soon as you put the batter on the grill. You have to wait for the one side to cook, and you see the bubbles on the other side, indicating it's time to flip. Mark Carney apparently doesn't know that. Okay. Danielle for the win. Sanjay's okay. We got lots of people. Yeah, I agree. Carney has never cooked for himself. Obviously. Okay, back to Pierre. And this really good speech here.
But still, it didn't go as planned. One of the pancakes got broken in half, and the other one splattered everywhere. And he owned up to it. But a careful review of a slow motion replay demonstrated exactly what the problem was. He couldn't figure out whether to put his elbows up or down. So
there's that gag writer again.
But it is great to be home here. I used to come here to Heritage Park when I was in school. They'd bring us here, our parents would dress us up like it was 1905. And we go into the little schoolhouse. I think it's still over there. And they even had the little strap. They didn't hit us very hard, but I got a little bit of a mark on my palm for talking too much during the class. And this is the place that taught me my values, the values of hard work, freedom, family, values that my wife Anna, who I'm very honored to have with me here, shares, the values with which we're raising our kids. I grew up in these neighborhoods, walked my dog, ran my dog in Fish Creek Park, delivered the Calgary Sun door to door as my very first job, played hockey in the local arenas. And these values that I've taken from this community and this province have taken me forward. And of course, these are the values of all Albertans. They're the values that Damien Kurek has demonstrated in putting his country first And I'm very excited. Yes, give him one more round of applause. Damien is a family man, a hardworking patriot, a great farmer, beloved in his community, known and trusted by people far and wide. And the story that touches me most about him and Danielle was about a year ago, his father passed away unexpectedly right in the middle of the harvest, and they have 6,000 acres that they had to bring home. And if you can imagine, making arrangements and mourning such a loss in the middle of the harvest was a big problem. They didn't know how they were going to bring home the crop. Then all of a sudden, there were these combines that just appeared from all directions on one morning. And they fanned out into the fields, and they brought home the crop and dropped it in the bins and went back to their farms to do their jobs. And that really is the story of Alberta, isn't it? And on the topic of Canada, we know that there can only be a strong Canada when there is a strong and respected Alberta. For me, that's personal. I was born in '79, and of course, only a few years later, Pierre Elliott Trudeau would attack.
Of course, Pierre Poilievre is already getting ready, set, go for the questions he's going to get on the doorsteps as he fights this by-election. So the message, of course, is a strong Alberta within a strong Canada. That's the message that he has to pit against the Alberta independence movement, which, as I've said every week here, is picking up momentum and steam in that province. So it will be interesting.
Our province with the National Energy Program. Not to mention, yeah, there's still a few that remember that. Many probably still paying the bill from it. At the same time, he hammered the entire country with money printing deficits that gave us the worst inflation and interest rates in our history. Our family actually lost our home, and we had to scrimp and save and get help from extended family in order to get our little place in Shaughnessy, which my mother still lives in. I think my mother is here today somewhere. There she is. And let me tell you, we are going to fight for our province again. We'll fight for oil and gas, for farmers, for low taxes, for decentralization, a stronger military, and a smaller federal government so that we can have a bigger Alberta. And if elected in Battle River Crowfoot, I'll use the platform of Leader of the Opposition to amplify the legitimate demands of Western Canada to end the unfair treatment. The era of Ottawa telling Alberta to pay up and shut up must end once and for all.
That's going to be the rallying cry of Poilievre's by-election. The era of Ottawa telling Alberta to put up and shut up is over.
Now the Liberals, they have a new salesman. They changed Trudeau for Carney, and he has a new, it's a new look, new talking points, some of which he's plagiarized from yours truly. And he's now claiming to support things that he's long opposed. Beyond that, he's trying to flip-flop on the issues that we know he really believes in. But at his core, he believes in the same top-down government knows best approach. Carney's first ever spending bill boosted the cost of government by 8% in just 1 year. That's twice the combined rate of inflation and population growth. And I note that that is on the baseline of the biggest, fattest, most morbidly obese government we've ever had. He's kept Trudeau's failed policies, the same red tape, the same production caps, the no new pipelines law, the ban on oil tankers, on gas-powered cars, and on much more. His catch and release laws, he's kept them in place. He hasn't changed them. You know, the former Liberal Justice Minister actually had his car stolen 3 times. This is a true story. He literally had his car stolen 3 times while he was Justice Minister, letting car thieves out of jail. But, you know, it is kind of surprising that they would target the former Justice Minister or a Liberal politician, because you'd think there'd be some sort of professional courtesy. As Ronald Reagan put it, if anything moves, a Liberal will tax it. If it keeps moving, a Liberal will regulate it. And when it stops moving, a Liberal will subsidize it.
Okay, when Pierre Poilievre starts to quote Ronald Reagan, you know he's trying to tell you something. He's returning to what he considers principles of conservatism. Now, I've seen comments here from folks who are saying, Pierre didn't do this, didn't do that. Where was he on this file? And I've been there every time to say, yeah, he should have been there on this file. He should have said something about this. He said nothing. I don't agree with the support for Bill C-5, for instance, and we will be following up on that as soon as we can. But this is what we're dealing with in Canada right now. And Pierre Poilievre might be the only hope this country has of avoiding a one-party dictatorship under Mark Carney. It sounds conspiratorial, but every week, as I said, we are seeing that intent confirmed.
Now, by blocking you from doing something and then making you ask the government to help you do it, it makes you reliant on them. It puts them at the center of all power, in charge of your life. And that is their mission, that is their goal. Mark Carney wants a full government takeover of our economy. He wants more control over your life, so elites and insiders like him control and profit from everything. We Conservatives, by contrast, we believe in freedom. We want you to have the ability to control your own destiny and make your own course. We believe in freedom of enterprise, freedom of speech, thought, religion, expression, and more. We want government that minds its own business and leaves people to be free to decide for themselves.
And there it is again. I played that at the beginning of the show, and that's the last thing you'll hear from Pierre. And I see a comment here from Susie. You are not wrong, David, and we fear this with you. And she was referring to my comments about Pierre Poilievre perhaps being the only hope we have in this country of avoiding a true one-party dictatorship. I know we have a uniparty to some degree. They're in lockstep on foreign policy. They're in lockstep now on Bill C-5. However, we still have some differentiation between these two parties to some degree. And Pierre Poilievre needs to distance himself as much as he can from the big government of Mark Carney. And that's what my point is today. And yes, I see Don, Alberta independence is open. And I know a lot of people are saying exactly that. And I've had lots of people talking about that issue on this show, especially Jeff Rath, the Council for the Alberta Prosperity Project. And you're quite right. That could be the other option of saving whatever is left of this country or producing an alternative version that is actually free. Because we're losing our freedom every day. You know that. I know that. Most of the Canadian people should know that. But as long as we keep fighting, I think we have to find some reason for hope, some reason for optimism, because otherwise I'm not going down without a fight. And I know all of you feel the same way. We're going to show I haven't shown the store in a while. Need to do that today. And I'll be back with some concluding remarks. Yeah, and I just donned the Alberta Proud hat. You can get yours at the store. We got a lot of great merchandise in there, a lot of new material. Encourage you to have a look at the store, make a purchase. And I think we've got some of the best merchandise out there. And I'm proud to wear it. And I wear my stand on guard hat when I'm out riding a bike or jogging. And I'm always amazed so many people watch this show in this area that I'm living in right now. And it's gratifying. So if you see me, come up and say hello. Always, always happy to meet and greet anybody who is a fan of this show. And I left that comment out there. That's what we all need to do, is to be grateful for friends and neighbors and family. And be grateful if they are like-minded. I think that's a great comment to go out with. Thanks for watching today, folks. God bless this country and Godspeed to all of you. I've been broadcasting live as usual from Ottawa. We'll be back again tomorrow. Thanks for watching today.